First off, I want to thank you all for the amazing support you've shown to the podcast. If you find it difficult to gain and finish hours-long 8 to 10 podcasts per week, please subscribe to most advanced, featured, and accurate quick podcast summaries on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. You can start with free trial, which lets you listen all the podcasts and later, just for the price of candy in most places. It will save you from spending 15 to 20 hours per week catching up. Here's a rundown on the science of rewiring your brain to be less miserable, featuring Dr. Rick Hanson by Chris Williamson. Dr. Rick Hanson sat down with Chris Williamson to discuss the neurobiology of happiness. They shifted by acknowledging the significant progress Chris had made since their last conversation 6 years ago.
Dr. Hanson shared his fascination with the evolution of the human brain, comparing it to a house with 3 floors: the brainstem, subcortex, and cortex. He emphasized that the lower regions of the brain are hard to train and are responsible for the negativity bias. Dr. Hanson explained that the brain is wired to respond more strongly to negative experiences than positive ones, making it essential to actively work on fostering beneficial states and traits. He broke down the process into 2 main parts: reducing the bad and growing the good. This involves increasing top-down regulation of negative factors, promoting emotional learning of positive experiences, and increasing the production of healthy opioids and oxytocin in the brain.
Chris Williamson asked Dr. Hanson to elaborate on the negativity bias, and he explained that it's a natural process that helped our ancestors survive. However, in modern life, it can create unnecessary suffering and aggravation.
Dr. Hanson outlined 5 key aspects of the negativity bias: continually scanning for bad news, over-focusing on it, overreacting to it, overlearning from it, and becoming sensitized to negative experiences. Dr. Hanson emphasized that it's essential to tilt towards valuing beneficial experiences in a clear-eyed way, not just to feel good, but to grow strengths inside and deal with the bad. He shared his personal experience of growing up as a shy and insecure kid and how he developed strengths inside to compensate for those feelings. He highlighted the importance of taking in the good to heal wounds and grow self-worth and self-confidence.
Chris Williamson noted that people often feel stuck with their minds, thinking that their programming is fixed.
Dr. Hanson's work challenges this idea, offering a way to rewire the brain and develop beneficial traits that can lead to greater happiness and well-being.
Chris emphasizes that convincing people of this power is crucial.
Dr. Rick Hanson agrees, highlighting that people often focus on making improvements in the outer world, but neglect their inner world. He stresses that the process of making things better in the inner world is a 2-step process: experiencing what you want to grow and internalizing that momentary patterning of neurological activation. This internalization leaves a lasting trace in the body, especially in the brain. Dr. Rick Hanson explains that people usually forget the second step, which is why he emphasizes the importance of being deliberate in taking in the good. He suggests that people can appreciate the 2-step process, state to trait, and take control of slowing down to internalize good experiences. He provides 3 evidence-based methods for heightening internalization: staying with the experience, feeling it in the body, and tracking the reward value of the experience.
Chris Williamson asks Dr. Rick Hanson to elaborate on the process of taking in the good, and he explains that it involves noticing something good happening, helping oneself feel something, and staying with the experience for a breath or longer. He also suggests feeling the experience in the body and highlighting what's enjoyable or meaningful about it. This process increases the consolidation of the experience in the brain and increases the trace left behind by the experience.
Dr. Rick Hanson maps this process onto his HEAL acronym framework, which stands for Have, Enrich, Absorb, and Link. The framework involves having the beneficial experience, enriching it, absorbing it, and optionally linking it to negative material to soothe and ease it. He also discusses the 5-minute challenge, which involves looking for beneficial experiences, slowing down to let them sink in, and identifying what you want to grow more inside. This involves reflecting on our experiences, especially those from our childhood, to understand what we're trying to grow and develop. To do this, we can start by experiencing and taking in the factors that contribute to our well-being, and then slow down to truly absorb them. This process can be as simple as taking a minute a day to marinate in what's known as the deep green. the natural setting of our species, where our body settles down and our mind is saturated with a sense of peacefulness, contentment, and love. This deliberate practice of internalizing beneficial experiences can have a profound impact on our brain and well-being. By retuning the amygdala and other parts of the brain that are biased negatively, we can retrain them to become more opportunity-focused and reactive to positive experience. This process is known as linking, where we bring a matched strength or resource into contact with a negative experience or emotion, allowing them to coexist and eventually integrate. For example, if someone struggles with anxiety in work environments or social situations, they can identify a psychological resource that would be matched to it, such as calming themselves or feeling strong and capable. This process of linking is central to therapy, trauma work, and personal healing. It's essential to approach it with kindness and self-compassion, recognizing that there may be an inner traitor that's allied with the negative and wants to keep it around. By staying with the process and wanting the positive to win, we can start to discover and develop the strengths and resources that will help us overcome our challenges. One of the most critical aspects of this process is slowing down and allowing ourselves to fully experience and embed the positive emotions and experiences. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to get caught up in the pursuit of novelty and achievement, but this can ultimately lead to burnout and a sense of disconnection. By prioritizing the present moment and marinating in its bounty, we can start to undo the biological machinery of craving and develop a sense of contentment and fulfillment. This is especially relevant in today's culture of conspicuous productivity, where being busy and achieving more is often seen as a badge of honor. However, this approach can lead to a system that's overly tuned and brittle, leaving little room for error or flexibility. By recognizing the importance of slowing down and prioritizing our well-being, we can start to create a more sustainable and meaningful approach to life. Ultimately, the goal is not to simply optimize for productivity or achievement, but to cultivate a deeper sense of fulfillment and happiness. By taking the time to reflect on our experiences, identify our strengths and resources, and deliberately practice linking, we can start to develop a more resilient core of well-being that will serve us well in all aspects of our life. It's because they're trying to achieve an enjoyable emotional state, but in the process, they're sacrificing the present moment and the things that truly bring them joy. This is likened to trying to put out a fire with gasoline or satisfying thirst with salt water.
Chris Williamson shares his personal experience of being driven by a desire for more, but eventually realizing that this approach is toxic and doesn't lead to true fulfillment. He talks about the importance of slowing down and allowing good things to sink in, rather than constantly chasing the next thing.
Dr. Rick Hanson chimes in, discussing how our brains are wired to constantly look for the next thing to want, even when we've already achieved our goals. He shares his own experience of struggling with contentment and feeling like he's never enough, despite being a high achiever. The conversation turns to the concept of already, feeling like you're already enough, already safe, and already content. Dr. Hanson shares his meditation practice, which focuses on cultivating a sense of already-ness, and how this can help people shift out of a deficit-based motivation and into a more fullness-based motivation.
Chris Williamson talks about how personal development can sometimes perpetuate the idea that we're not enough, and that we need to constantly strive for more. He shares his own experience of feeling like he's on a trajectory of self-improvement, but never quite feeling like he's arrived.
Dr. Hanson discusses the difference between being motivated by a sense of something missing versus being motivated by a sense of fullness. He shares his own experience of being driven by a desire for more, but eventually realizing that this approach is toxic and doesn't lead to true fulfillment. The conversation turns to the topic of evidence-based research on the impact of these strategies on personality, neuroticism, extroversion, well-being, and health outcomes. He shares that the most powerful factors in change are what people are doing inside their minds at the time with how they engage the experiences they're having. The conversation turns to the topic of psychotherapy and how it's not been very effective in helping people make lasting changes. Dr. Hanson shares that the average response to psychotherapy for anxiety or depression has remained the same over the past 40 years, despite new theories and approaches. He argues that the field needs to focus more on teaching people how to deliberately internalize useful experiences and grow the good that lasts inside.
Chris Williamson compares this to finding a drug that works, but never developing a better one.
Dr. Hanson agrees, saying that it's strange that the field of psychotherapy hasn't made more progress in helping people make lasting changes. The brain defaults to this network when things settle down, and it's involved with mental time travel, imagining the future, and reflecting on the past. This network is self-referential. Very me, myself, and I, and when people are stuck, they're reinforcing what they're ruminating about and sensitizing their brain to what's negative. To get out of this cycle, it's essential to feel the feelings mindfully in a framework of spacious awareness, rather than avoiding them or getting glued to the anger or resentment. One way to break this circuit is to take action. People often ruminate to avoid certain experiences, particularly those related to taking action. Taking action binds anxiety and breaks people out of the rumination cycle. Another hack is to do interoception, tuning into the internal sensations of the body, which engages a part of the brain called the insula and acts like a circuit breaker. This reduces activity in the default mode network and brings people into the present. Another approach is to tilt towards some kind of intensely positive experience, like watching a cat video on YouTube or eating something good. This can help reduce the reinforcement of the rumination cycle. Another effective hack is to get a sense of things as a whole, engaging the right hemisphere of the brain, which does holistic, gestalt processing. This can be done by getting a sense of the sensations of breathing in the chest as a whole or the body as a whole. When people get stuck in a vicious cycle of rumination, they may not even realize they're increasing their sensitization to negative experiences in the future, which can make them more fearful. To break this cycle, it's essential to take action, feel the feelings mindfully, and use hacks like interoception and getting a sense of things as a whole. If someone has acquired negative learning across life, they may wonder if it's possible to get rid of those negative learnings. The answer is that people can really change over time, and it's possible to release old pain and replace it with something beneficial. Factors that help people do this include bringing effort to it, being skillful, and reaching out to experts. It's also essential to get in touch with one's own fundamental good-heartedness, innate goodness, and wakefulness. This can be done by gradually cultivating it over time and using it as a refuge to return to. Rick Hanson's work is all about weaving together the hard neuroscience and neurobiology with the peaceful dharmic side. He offers a wealth of information on his website, rickhanson.net, and has a podcast called Being Well, which is driven by his son, Forrest. People can check out his content, including his podcast, to learn more about how to change for the better over time. In fact, it might not even be 6 months before he returns.
Dr. Hanson responded graciously, wishing Chris well and expressing his hope that he would be able to recognize his own goodness. Chris then turned his attention to the audience, noting that the YouTube algorithm had selected a specific episode just for them. He encouraged listeners to check it out, suggesting that the algorithm might even know things about them that they don't know themselves. Thank you for tuning in. Please click follow button and just remember, subscription is only $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening.